All right, folks, thank you for joining us tonight. A couple of quick announcements before we get started. We will be, next week, we're going to have governor candidates Dr. Bob Diber and Alex Paterakis, so that will complete our series with governor's candidates. Then 2 weeks from tonight, on the 27th, we're going to screen the Our Revolution Illinois Governors Forum from last Sunday in Chicago. So we hope everyone will join us for that. Also upcoming in December, details coming soon, we're going to be hosting a panel on healthcare and immigration. Details, like I said, will be coming out soon. We're still putting this together. It's in the planning process, but it will be here. I think it's a Tuesday or a Thursday. We'll let everybody know about that. We have some special guests with us tonight. First, I'm going to bring up Alison Squires, who is the chair of the Progressives of Kane County, as well as a Sugar Grove Township trustee, for a special announcement.
Yay!
Thank you, Larry. So, like he said, I'm the chair of the Progressives of Kane County. I ran for Sugar Grove, the village trustee position, and I narrowly lost, and then 2 openings came up in our local government, and I applied for one of them, and I made it, and it's probably because I ran before and narrowly lost. So even if you lose, you know, it's not always, you know, it was an experience, and I wouldn't have gotten appointed if I didn't do that, and I didn't take the time, and I didn't invest my time and my money and knock on all those doors. I probably wouldn't have gotten appointed. So I'm also a STEM educator. I teach an after-school robotics engineering class to children, and I tutor mathematics. And I've been volunteering for the Democratic Party for years, especially the congressional districts. I started in my early 20s, and there hasn't been too many years that I haven't volunteered, but there has been a few, like when I graduated from college and got married and stuff. And, you know, I've worked hard for the Democratic Party in 14th Congressional District, and I feel like it's underserved for by the Democrats, so it's part of the reason why I chose to run for State Central Committee. That is a position within the Democratic Party that votes for the chair and the vice chair. I think you had a bunch of State Central Committee men here in the spring. I don't know if everyone was here when you did that meeting. And I decided to run for that because I think we need progressive representation in the party. And I think we need to be more welcoming to progressive candidates. We need to listen to grassroots Democrats, and we need to get the special interest out of government, because I think that more than anything, I think it's the special interest money that blocks a progressive populist message that we need to win more offices. So that's my point. And I don't know if anyone has any questions for me, but I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Go fight, win.
Yes. It's kind of a strange position. I know it's not like Congress or anything, so it's not. Go ahead.
How many signatures do you need?
I need 100.
Is that it?
It is just 100, so I want like at least 300 is what I'm thinking. I'll take any more than that. I think I'm just going to gather them until I turn them in, is what I'm thinking. And I plan on turning them in, I think the first day, but we'll see how my plans are. I have kids and stuff, so.
It has to be in your county, or what?
I think you have to file that in Springfield.
But it's not limited to...
Oh, it's the 14th Congressional District. I apologize. So.
Oh, so you should be a resident of the 14th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a male and a female for this position in each congressional district. So, and I live in the 14th, so.
Okay.
Is that it? Thank you.
Is there pushback from the establishment? Have you faced any pushback from the establishment?
Well, I know that Christina Zahorak has pushed back in McHenry County. And Mark Gately called me and asked me why I was running for it, but never directly told me not to run for it, so that's the
You
most
might want to
pushback I got.
explain who those people are.
Mark Gately is the chair of the Kane County Democrats, and Christina is associated with the McHenry County Democrats. So that's, I mean, I think there was more pushback up there because she's from there, but other than that,
How many challengers are you facing?
just one.
Just one?
Mhm.
Is she an incumbent?
She ran as a write-in in McHenry County, which I don't think you're allowed to do for this position. So I'm not sure if they appointed her or if she just got in because she ran as a write-in. I'm sure it was because she ran as a write-in. Nobody else put any effort, so.
One is a write-in.
Yeah, okay. If nobody else put any effort, I don't see why they wouldn't appoint her either, honestly.
Is this a position that you think that the party would put a lot of money into? Is it like we're something? I think what I'm trying to ask is, I don't know how desirable a position this is seen to be, so I'm wondering, is this a position that?
I have no idea.
Okay,
I
I'm
have
sorry.
no idea. Honestly, I spent a little money on like cards with my name on it, and that's it so far.
The video is on our social media from that night back in May. Basically, this is just part of the state Democratic Party. So if people are pleased with their representatives, then I urge you to get to know them. If you're not so pleased, consider running against them.
So from that position, I'm sorry, I don't want to be shut up, but do you pick the speaker?
No,
Like,
the
what do you pick?
speaker,
The chair.
the chair, and the
Okay.
vice chair of the party. I think in that position are also highly encouraged to help whoever is running within that congressional district, which I kind of do anyways.
Okay.
So, and I've done for years. Apparently I'd like to do it, so I don't have a problem doing it.
Well, thank you very much for being here. That's very exciting.
Who's the congressman on the 14th right now?
Randy Halprin. Yeah, he's not a good one.
Not for long.
However, what a great segue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
Okay, just a couple of quick announcements. Bill Lorch and I, who are the resident lunatics, are starting a blending library. We're looking for a donation of a little library-type cart, and we will have and donations of books, magazines, whatever, political, progressive things that you think other progressives might want to read. So please, we'll keep you posted, but if you have things like that you want to bring in, please do. And we're also starting a seed library as part of our efforts to really push the local food movement in the area and start building that. And so we're literally looking for a old library card catalog, if anybody can help us locate one of those. Apparently they go for big bucks these days, but somebody may not know that. And so we're also going to be looking for volunteers once we can get that going to help us sort of little seeds. And we're going to actually start right back in the Progressive's office until we get space. So there you go. We also have a quick announcement. We have a contest going that you may or may not have heard about. It's petition season, and so we have a contest for who gets the most times out there getting petitions signed for various candidates, whether it's yourself or somebody else. And all you got to do is take a picture of yourself out there canvassing, post it on your Facebook with the tag WCP Strong, and the folks who do the best are going to get fabulous prizes, which I'm not sure what they are yet, but I think they'll be fabulous.
They are fabulous.
They are fabulous. So please, when you're out there canvassing, post those pictures, and let's see who can win the day. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Larry to introduce our... Oh, never mind. Here we go.
I don't know if I'm going to frame here, but so me and Loretta Westbrooks and 4 or 5 other people formed a group called Safety Alliance for Families Everywhere. Loretta kind of pushed me to call the director of DCFS, which I did, and I landed a meeting with her. So she'll be here in Joliet on Tuesday. We're meeting at 10 o'clock at Pastor Herb Brooks Church. We're talking about 7 or 8 bullet points where it relates to the Samaj Crosby case, the failures of DCFS, and how moving forward we can enact legislation or change the current legislation to protect children everywhere in Illinois. So we're doing that Tuesday, 10 o'clock, Pastor Herb Brooks Church, and we have those 7 or 8 bullet points. It is open to the public, so everyone is welcome to come and voice your concerns. Thank you. Turn it over to Larry.
All right, and lastly, we do have people tonight who have petitions for various offices. We're going to have them all filled in at the end, so we're not going to have people passing petitions now, but if you want to help get candidates on the ballot, please sign for them. We have congressional candidates, state central committee woman candidates, attorney general candidate, and perhaps some others. So we'll have them on the table here to my left at the end. Also, we keep this going by our generous donations and membership dues, so we have the honey pots on the tables as always. If you can, please place a couple dollars in there so we can keep the lights on and keep this going. Without any further ado, we have congressional candidates tonight with us. Running in the 3rd District against Dan Lipinski is Marie Newman. And running in the 14th against ultimately Randy Hulkran is Jim Walz. I'm sorry, I didn't coordinate this ahead of time. Come on down.
Okay, good. So this is your meeting, so I always like to give you guys the option. What I usually do is share a little bit about my background and then talk about what I believe. And then from there, I open it up for questions, but we can do it in any order. So is that a good order for you guys?
Yeah.
Awesome. So a little bit about me. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I was born in the Beverly neighborhood, which is the south part of my district. And so if you can envision the 3rd District, it starts under the South Loop in the Bridgeport area, kind of by Sox Park, right? Then it squiggles its way under the loop,
Good word.
up over, I always say it looks like a Rorschach test. And it goes up through Midway area and then up to the western suburbs. I live in LaGrange. And then it goes on a southwest trajectory through the Beverly, back of the yards, bunch of different areas out to where we are, a little bit away from here
It's
on
in
the
front
top of Will
Orland
County.
Park, too.
Yep, Orland Park and through Lockport and Homer Glen and Crest Hill, a few other Will County areas. So it is truly a squiggly line that hugs the 55. So that's the 3rd District. I was born at the bottom of the district, I was raised in the middle of the district, and now I live at the top of the district. So I've always been a 3rd Districter. I have about 400 cousins, so whenever I'm out and about and they see me on Facebook saying that, oh, you were in Bridgeport, why didn't you call me? I said, well, I'm just a little bit busy right now, just a little bit. So really enjoying this run, and I'll tell you why. You kind of get reacquainted with folks you haven't seen in a long time. That happens every day, right, because I'm throughout the district, so I'm really enjoying that. So a little bit about my background. I started out in the marketing and advertising business, worked my way up to partner, and then I was in executive management at a couple of small firms that were ad agencies. From there I decided, wow, I'd really like to see my kids. And they were very little at the time. So 13 years ago I started my own firm. It's called Marie Newman and Associates, and it was a consulting firm that did both marketing and advertising as well as management consulting. From there, I was having a good time with my own firm, and things were going very well. And the world stopped spinning one day when I learned that my son, over a period of months, had been severely bullied to the point where I required hospitalization and therapy for a long time. So it took a while for him to get knitted back together. During that time, it was both the worst time but the best time. And when I say it was the best time, it was because I learned a lot about humanity, both sides of humanity and the goodness in humanity, because people were very helpful to my family. So at that time, what I realized is that the saying that my mother had been saying for all my life, saying that, when you keep sweeping things under the rug, you know what happens? There's a lump or a bump that is created, and you usually trip over it. And that's what happens when you hide things, when you throw it under the rug.
I love that.
So,
I love that.
my mom will be so excited that you like it. So, and what that's meant to say is that what I realized is that we had to stop throwing this under the rug in my community. I lived in a different community than I do now. I lived actually in DuPage County. And the reality of that is that the town was riddled with bullying. One night when I decided to do full open kimono and tell everybody that my child was being bullied severely, I got 60 calls in one night from crying moms. So on a town of 27,000 people, I got 60 moms calling me saying that their families were being terrorized too. So what I realized in that moment is that that was a supreme call to action, and I've had a few of those over the years, right? That was one of many. And what I realized is that no one's going to take this on because it's icky. No one wants to talk about bullying, right? So I took it on. So at that point, I built a coalition of 100 families, and we got a anti-bullying system put in place in the district. Then Governor Quinn's office called and said, hey, can you sit on a task force and help a bunch of folks with best practices? I said, sure thing. So did that, and then I decided, gosh, I've done all this research, why don't I write a book? So I did. So wrote a book about bullying, and then from there, Sears Holdings called me and said, hey, would you build a national nonprofit program for us? So we brought Team Up to Stop Bullying to life, and from there, actually worked on both state level legislative policy as well as at the federal level. So I was invited to the White House Summit and worked on a bunch of legislative policy that actually manifested into the bill that President Obama signed in 2012 and Governor Quinn signed in 2011. So learned a lot through that process, and also learned that all of the volunteering skills that I had built throughout since I was a little girl, this is what it culminated in. And I thought, gosh, this is great. I can work and I can do this advocacy work. So a couple years later, I realized there was another inadequacy and kind of an unjust situation going on, that cancer clinical trials are not available to everybody. While cancer knows everybody, not everybody can actually access a cancer clinical trial. So I worked on a database that allowed that to be more egalitarian in nature and available to all oncologists and all people with cancer. And then finally, about 2.5 years ago, and this was long after Sandy Hook, Moms Demand Action was created right after Sandy Hook massacre. And I found them, and I felt like, wow, this is a great cause, and they've really got their act together. So 4 million moms across the nation are all fighting for universal background checks and keeping weapons out of dangerous people's hands. And that's really their mission. I said, I want in, for sure. So I did. So I was the Illinois spokesperson for a couple of years. And then fast forward to last fall, those women, along with some other League of Women Voter individuals, not as an organization, they're a 501c3, came to me and said, Marie, would you run? And I had been asked a couple times to run against Lipinski, and always said, gosh, my kids are this, something's going on in my family. But at this time, my kids are both flourishing and doing well, and my husband is crazy enough to let his crazy wife do this. So, all good, right? Why not? So at that point, we did a deep data dive and realized that he being Lipinski's vulnerable in 26 of the 40 communities. His unfavorables were in the 70s, 7 zeros, his favorables in the 20s. That's kind of death for a congressman if you don't know that. So I said, okay, this is winnable. So then January 1st, I put together my exploratory team. We have now had 99 coffee issue sessions where we've had a room like this, or even 6 people in a room, to talk about the issues. And the main issues in my district are healthcare for all, small business, and working families.
How about the gun violence? Because there's a lot of other groups out there. Illinois Coalition Against Gun Violence.
Yep.
I've been active with them. We've been trying to
they're
get
terrific.
this Senate bill. Denise Stoneback.
Yep.
Okay. You piped in with her?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
So all of those coalitions are fantastic. So the Brady campaign,
We're trying to reach through the churches.
Right.
We're ongoing
It's so
right now. I
good.
just got my church signing up last night.
That's great. You guys were actually so I spoke at a rally with Congresswoman Schakowsky on Monday night. Were you at that rally?
No,
In
I
Federal
was
Plaza.
Southsider. She's Northsider.
Yep,
No.
so it was in Federal Plaza. It was for everybody, and your
Well,
group
no,
was there.
I
Yep.
don't get downtown if I can avoid it.
You're smart then. You're smarter than most. Yes, we did have that rally. Those groups are all terrific. So April 1st, I filed for candidacy. We've been campaigning ever since. Our numbers look good. We started out with 2,500 supporters. We now have 20,000. So things are looking very good. I'm kicking off my poll this week. So that'll be the business case that will drive the PACs to make a decision in DC for me. And when I say PACs, it's the good PACs. That's the nonprofit PACs. That's not corporate PACs. So we are looking good. I'm very excited. A little bit about my belief structure, because that's important to know as a candidate. So because the three most things I'm passionate about, I happen to be the district's most passionate items as well. I believe that working families should have a livable wage. I believe that they should have paid leave and other benefits. If they work a 40-hour week, they should get paid benefits like everybody else in the world. And I also believe that they need affordable childcare. This is particularly a passionate item for me, that the reason people can't have the jobs that they want and have to work multiple jobs is because childcare is so incredibly expensive, and it's not very accessible too. It's not in every community. I spend a lot of time in the back of the yards community, which is below Bridgeport. It's kind of down here in the Chicago area. And they have an extreme violence problem, and they have an extreme school problem. They don't have guidance counselors in their schools. They do not have a school art program. They do not have music. They do not have a lot. They don't have a psychologist, social worker, or any of the above. And the reason that some of the things that happen in that area, gun violence among many of them, is that kids don't have an opportunity and they don't have a place to go. It's really simple. So if there was affordable childcare and places for kids to go of all ages, there would be less violence in the world and less poverty. It's just a simple fact. The correlation is there. So working families issues are very important to me, because in my district, more people than not work 2 jobs. Most parents work 2 jobs. So that is very disconcerting for families, but also for individuals. It's not just about parents. Very challenging environment. The third area that's very important to me, because of those working families, many of them own small businesses. About 80% of my district is small business, under $1.5 million in net revenue. So those are the smallest of businesses with working families running them. So they're all tied together. Healthcare for all, which I believe in, and by the way, I believe in Medicare for all. I'm loud and proud about that.
Yes.
And I also believe that they're all tied together, so that if our quality of health is good and you have access to health care and actually can have health care, good. If you have access to child care, paid leave and a livable wage, that's good. They're all tied together. So for me, one affects the other, and we have to drive all 3 forwards as priority moving forward. So with that, I'll put myself on pause, and please ask anything that you would like, or make a comment, or whatever you would like. So I'll open up the floor. Go ahead.
This is just a really wild guess, but were you like a Bernie person, or were you?
I did vote for Bernie in the primary. I did coalesce behind Hillary, because I felt like unity and solidarity was important, but yeah, I did vote for Bernie. Sir.
Well, thank you. About your Medicare for all. I call this the dumbing of America. Right now, we've been going through soda pop tax. If you totally understand the problem, their problem has been 45% of their budget is because of hospitalization of non-insured people. They have closed half the services in Oak Forest, and the same thing, they do only outpatient now in Oak Forest and up north.
Yeah.
Now, they also, Chicago did 6 years ago, they used to have 38 mental health centers throughout the city.
Yep.
There was pro-East that had to go every day and get medication from one of those community centers. They closed them all. The violence, we have a health issue that is severe. And if we had Medicare for all, that 45% budget of Cook County would disappear overnight. They would be able to lower their taxes. They can open the mental health centers again, because every person coming to that building will be paying customer. If we had a single payer system, Medicare for all like Bernie. And by the way, that plan was instituted with the help of 20,000 doctors union and 140,000 nurses union. It's a very well bill. It provides for glasses, dental, hearing aids, and it's a truly single payer, even though it's called dumbing of America. If you call it Medicare for all, 56% of the people in this country is for it. If you call it single payer, 23% are for it. The dumbing of America.
Well, yes and no. So I agree with everything you said, by the way, but the reason that it's not just about branding, and I mean, I'm the first one to say that Bernie probably put a little branding out there to tell him. However, what I will say is that, as you know, Medicare for All right now is an existing program that works, and people did feel good about it. So it's not so much that I think we're dumbing, that we created a situation that was familiar to Americans and felt good.
If you don't have the $370 for Part B, and you're hit with that full bill, trust me, there's still 60% of the bankruptcies are medical. Out of that 60%, 30% is seniors with Medicare. So Medicare is not the answer. It was never the answer. At one time it was, but it is no longer. We have to go to a single payer system.
Yep, and so here's what I would say, is that, and I'm with you 100%, is that in this country, you saw what happened when we went to a new healthcare system and with Obamacare. We do have to do things in pieces. And so if we go to Medicare for All first, it's probably a very good step on the way to single payer, true single payer, because some people confuse single payer with Medicare for All. They are not the same.
Bernie's bill is, if you read it and understand it, it is called Medicare for All, because you have to label it, because I told you that 50%.
So for 7 years, you know, Blue Cross Blue Shield is the administrator on that, right? You know that, right? They're the underwriter and the administrator of Medicare.
Well, depending if you're talking about the Advantage portion, or you're talking, I don't understand.
So right now, because you have to have someone to administer Medicare for All, it's underwritten and administered by a unit of Blue Cross Blue Shield.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the way that Bernie wrote the bill is so that we keep those experts running and then we wean off to a true just government platform. But I throw that out there because it is a phasing in of things and it's not an immediate.
5 years.
But our Blue Cross Blue Shield here in Illinois is a nonprofit yet, isn't it, or is it?
No.
So no, here is not, most of the states are not nonprofits anymore. But, you know, they're an
They've all been
association.
corrupted.
It was all once nonprofit when they first started.
Right.
Yeah. That's what we first of all have to do, is get all this back to nonprofit status, because that's a 20% layer on top, just for a few people to engorge themselves.
We need to get rid of.
We have to get rid of this whole profit. Certain segments of the economy have to be for the people, period. And that's
Awesome.
what we
Now
have to
let's-
stress as congressmen.
Awesome. But let's get back to letting a lot of folks ask questions, because we all have very, very passionate
Our future
opinions, and we could all
committee has
talk
a-
for a
our
long
committee
time.
has a
We have a lot of
question.
questions.
I was just gonna say, on the Medicare for All discussion, I help with the Medicare for All forum, and they pulled a lot of phrases, and Medicare for All is statistically the safest to say and get the point across. And I think actually the improved Medicare bill is probably a little better than Bernie. And I love Bernie. I was the Bernie Sanders delegate for the 14th Congressional District. But the improved Medicare for All bill covers everyone across the line equally. And Bernie's bill does not do that. It does cut out the middle class a little bit. So, and it puts more of a burden on the middle class, whereas the improved Medicare bill that's in there covers everyone equally across the board. So, yes.
So, just to shift away from that, I'm just curious, as going in, hopefully for your first time in Congress, and hopefully for a long time after, how do you feel about fundraising phone calls?
They're horrible. I do it all day long. It's horrible. It's ridiculous. So I'll tell you two things because I'm pretty transparent. So before I started this process, I hated that our Congress people have to spend 20 to 40 hours a week when they're in session on the phone. Now, some of them do 7, and then like in the Senate, like Dick Durbin never has to do call time. Let's be honest about that. And God bless him for it. Yeah, it's ridiculous waste of time, and it takes away time and energy. So now, I am fundraising easily the most out of any given piece of the pie in the campaign, which is a ridiculous thing too. Now I'm lucky because I started super early. I started January 1st, so I did all my data work in November and December of last year, and then I've been meeting people. So I've met with well over 4,000 people throughout the district. So I validated my data and then some. So I was able to meet with people, and I knew that I probably would have to spend a lot of time fundraising. So I planned it well enough. That said, it is extremely hard. We have 5 times, I just want to be clear on donor wear out, and this is a very important tide issue, so I'm not walking away from your issue. The donor wear out in this state is unprecedented. We have 5 times, by a factor of 5, so exponentially 5 times as many candidates ever in the history of Illinois in all of the primary races. So in every race across the state of Illinois, we have 5 times as many as we have ever had in the last historical period.
In both parties?
No, just in Democrats.
Okay.
So with that, and sir, I do want to get your question, I'm so sorry, I just want to make one more point around that, is that donor wear out is beyond the pale. Everyone's exhausted, and I only can empathize with them on the phone. When I'm on the phone with them, I'm like, yeah, I would be too. I'm so with you on that.
Yeah.
The reason that I'm tying that to your question is that we shouldn't be doing this. And when I get to Congress, I will tell you, it's not just End Citizens United. It's have a different way we do our elections. You know, I'm not saying we do it UK, here's 30 grand and 3 months. Maybe it's 6 months and 50 grand. I don't know what it is, but we have to level the playing field. So sir, go ahead.
Okay, I have 2 questions. First question is, what is your position on trade? I know Donald Trump probably won the last election on that issue.
Yeah.
The Democrats are weak on it. I've been to a number of congressional forums. This is
Yeah.
3rd, 14th, and 6th.
Yes.
And the candidates seem to be tone deaf on that issue, although the American people are not.
Yeah, I mean, I have some pretty firm stances on that, you'll find. I am not a fan of TPP at all. And I do believe NAFTA needs some renegotiation. I'm not agreeing with the negotiation that Mr. Trump wants to have, by the way. But I do believe that it needs some revision. That has to be a two-way street. Now, with every trade agreement, my 3 requirements is that it's worker-friendly, that it's friendly to the environment, and that it is good for the economy. What's fascinating about my district is that my district actually has benefited from NAFTA because of the level of manufacturing that goes on in my district. So Congressman Quigley and a few others did a study between our 2 district areas, and of the entire Midwest, our 2 districts benefited from NAFTA the most. Because it does produce some crops because it's related to the transportation industry in our district. And in my district, there are more lines of track in my district than any other district in the entire nation. So there's reasons why NAFTA works well for us, but it can be significantly better.
I think, as a whole, I think NAFTA was a disaster. I think, it's one of many trade policies that followed that. I mean, it's lowered the standard of living, it's killed unions.
Yeah. It's not the only thing that's killed unions. Let's not only give that credit.
Well,
that is, the Republicans have killed unions. So
Yeah.
if you look at a graph that goes from the 80s to now, the state of unions has literally gone like that.
Ever since Ronnie Reagan.
Yeah, and it also is that there's the wage suppression has gone like that too. So our wages have been suppressed. It's not just NAFTA. I will agree with you. It's certainly part of the responsibility, but it's Republicans have built bills and laws around to make unions be weaker and weaker.
But when you outsource jobs and you allow the supply of labor to grow, obviously, wages are going to shrink. And
Right.
that's affected the standard of living for middle class people. Last question, you just addressed this quickly.
Sure.
I've been to a number of forums, the 14th, the 3rd, and the 6th, and nobody's talking about the wars, the endless wars that the country's prosecuting. The public, surprisingly, is not excited about it, but I mean, we're spending trillions of dollars on these wars that are killing Americans and killing foreigners and making enemies of the United States. At the same time, we need to invest in our roads, our schools, there's so much need in this country, single payer, for instance.
Right.
But nobody talks about the wasted resources that we're spending in these wars that are a disaster.
So you should read 2 position papers by Al Franken. He does outline that very beautifully. A few other folks have done it nicely too. They probably don't speak loud enough, so to your point, I agree with that. But it is a ridiculous waste. As I have said many times in many of my meet and greets, I would rather us put money from the DOD back into state outposts, embassies, and have real community outreach. My background's in marketing, so I believe in communication a lot. And what we don't do right now is use an embassy as the original intent. The founders of this nation meant for embassies to be community outreach posts where you literally went out into the community and spoke with folks and understood the cultures and the people of each of the nations in which we had an embassy. That was what it was designed for. It's no longer used that way. And the fact that Trump is shutting down all of these outposts and embassies is disgusting and sick.
I think a larger factor might be the fact that the media seems to be in collusion with the government that did not talk about the war and the cost of war. The American public has no clue.
I agree with that. I think it's underreported for sure.
Absolutely.
No, what I do recommend, because I just started doing this about 18 months ago, is watch BBC. They do articulate those numbers quite nicely.
I said watch RT. They give you better.
I think we'd like to go and bring up
Sure.
Jim at this
Yep,
point, just to
sorry.
make sure you
Yep.
get some time. If there are any questions, we can come back to
Sure,
you.
gotcha.
I know there are other questions. I apologize.
There's one more before. Bill, you have a real quick one?
I'm a 20-year Navy veteran and a product of Vietnam, okay? I can tell you this right off the bat. And war is the most useless thing that you have ever had. The government is so screwed up with that.
Yep.
They're in the clutches of what Eisenhower warned us about, the industrial complex. They're not going to get out of it until we stand up and do something.
Right.
And that's why we're
That's the only
activists,
thing I
right?
can say about that. And by the way, I stay real close to the United Nurses Union.
Yes.
And I love their comments that I go by. I swear, this is it. They told the Congress critters, we are going to haunt your offices if you don't get on single-payer health care. And if you don't like that, we're going to take your seat.
That's right.
That was what they said. And I'm 100% behind the United Nurses and out of San Francisco.
Yeah.
That's what I had to say.
Well, and first of all, and I'll yield the floor to Jim, but I do want to let you know that I'm working with NNU right now, Jan Rodolfo here in the city. So I'm working with the Nurses Union right now with Reclaim. So we're in lockstep on our belief structure around that. So, and I agree with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Jim.
I'm Jim Walz. Some of you I'm meeting now for the first time today, and to those of you that know me, might know some of my history. I was a Democratic candidate who ran against Randy Hultgren this past election cycle. Because 12 years ago, I heard my calling, and that was democracy starts with you. It's not a spectator sport. Tag, you're it. I heard the calling by Senator Bernie Sanders.
Hey.
And if you want to see positive change, you have to be that change. When I look to Washington, I ask myself the question, if pro is the opposite of con, what does that say about the words progress in Congress? There are so many things at stake in Washington, D.C., coming out of Washington, D.C. The health of each other, the health of our environment, and the health of our democracy. If you look to see what's coming out of the present occupant of the White House, and his assault on the Affordable Care Act, and the Republican votes to take health care away from the most vulnerable while giving tax breaks to the rich, that is immoral. Because I believe that health care is a right and not a privilege. The only health care that health insurance companies provide is stress. They make money off the misery of other people. And that's got to stop. During the first 100 days as your representative of the 14th Congressional District, I will sponsor legislation similar to John Conyers' House Bill 676, single-payer universal health care. I will sponsor or co-sponsor any legislation that allows us to renegotiate prices on behalf of Medicare, just as we do with Medicaid and the Veterans Administration. During the first 100 days of the representative of the 14th District, I will sponsor legislation that allows us to re-import drugs from other countries. Those two issues will save our country tens of billions of dollars a year. Tens of billions of dollars a year. I will also push for the lowering of Medicare eligibility down to 55 years of age. What that would allow people to do, who have the financial wherewithal to do it, they can retire with dignity. Let's face it, a lot of people just stay on their jobs for the sheer purpose of their health care.
Right.
Yes.
If people were allowed to retire early, that would actually tighten up the job market, because somebody would have to fill those jobs in theory, right? So those people graduating without a job right now, maybe they'd be able to fill it in. With what we see with the hurricanes over the last month, the fires in the Pacific Northwest, and now in California, how many people here think that global climate change is one of the major issues of our time?
Yes.
Yeah.
It goes without saying. We need an all-above approach. We need to get ourselves off our dependency on fossil fuels and lean on renewable energies. During the first 100 days, as your representative, I will introduce any and all legislation that incentivizes the use of solar, wind, geothermal, or any other silver bullet that will help reduce our...
But not nukes.
But not nukes. Not nukes. In our democracy, let's face it, we have far too many politicians in Washington and not enough representatives. A politician only looks as far as the next election. A representative looks as far as the next election and beyond. Our number one objective in the 14th Congressional District is get Randy Hultgren the hell out of Washington, D.C. Along with Adam Kinzinger and Representative Roskin. All right? We need a clean slate for so many different reasons. Their constituencies are comprised of big banks, big pharma, big oil, and the health insurance industries. My constituencies would be the people not just of the 14th District, but everybody throughout the country. Because let's face it, all votes out of Washington, D.C. affect you wherever you live. You just look at the bills that are passed. Whether it be Republicans voting to allow people with mental health issues easier access to guns, give me a break. We need, like I said, there are so many things at stake. You know, I've been to so many parades, fairs, festivals, and this is, listen, whether people are Republican, Democrat, or independent, we are all in this together. All right? Disease and misfortune knows no political stripe. If you looked at the people in Houston, Texas, and Florida, San Juan, and out in California now, you know, you see people helping each other. They're not asking what your political stripe is. They're helping each other. And we need to do just that. My wife and I have been married for 31 years. I'll kick my covers. A quick note. I met my wife on the night of September 1st, 1983 at 8 p.m. At about 10:30 that night, she told me that if she had a son, his name would be Stephen. And I told her about a half hour later, if I had a daughter, her name would be Rachel. 34 years later, we have a son, Stephen, and a daughter, Rachel. And I'm the luckiest guy in the world. Because aside from being married for 31 years and having 2 great kids, you know, running for Congress the last time around was the most satisfying experience of my life. Because I'm telling you, there are more of us out there than there are of them. So there are some Republicans that don't realize that they're probably more progressive than they realize. If you think about it, Donald Trump won the Republican nomination, running as a populist against the TPP, preserve Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, bring back jobs from overseas. You know, if you put those words on a chalkboard and you didn't say who the author was, you'd think he'd agree. Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, same message. And I know for a fact, last primary season, there were a lot of Republicans that pulled having access to voting records. A lot of Republicans pulled Democratic tickets. They didn't pull them to vote for Hillary Clinton, they pulled it to vote for Bernie Sanders. I'm telling you that right now. There were a lot of Republicans that really liked Bernie Sanders and his message. All of America should thank God that Bernie Sanders ran for the presidency of the United States, because he brought up so many issues that were not even on the radar.
Right.
All right? So we should all give a bit of thanks to Bernie Sanders perpetually. And we can only hope that he or Elizabeth Warren throw their hat in the ring in 2020, for sure. But I'll put my comments on pause and ask you to ask me anything you'd like. Yes, sir.
A study that was done in 2012 actually, jointly by Princeton and Northwestern, stated that 50% of all jobs, not just trucking, not just taxis, 50% of all jobs would be demolished by automation and artificial intelligence by the year 2032, I believe it. I think they said 20 years from the report. What is the answer to that? 50% of jobs.
Okay, automation certainly is. We have gone through a layer of unemployment due to automation. You know, Donald Trump signed his little executive order, made some proclamation that's going to save coal jobs. Well, give me a break. They lost a lot of their jobs through other forms of fossil fuels, whether it be coal or fracking, which I'm totally against, okay? You know, the petro industry and whatnot, but also automation, okay? Yes, that is a reality. But what we've done with our trade policies over the last 35 years, we've done nothing but export good union-paying jobs while importing unemployment and lower wages. All right? When a manufacturing facility leaves small-town USA, and that is the heartbeat of the economy, you have individuals that work there for decades or generational employment, and they lose their jobs through no fault of their own. Their jobs are shipped overseas. What are those people supposed to do? Okay? They have to go to rely and work at Walmart or McDonald's, trying to raise a family of 4. They fall below the poverty line, then they have access to Medicaid and food stamps. That's a social safety net that should be there for everybody, especially when you lose your job through no fault of your own. All right? We need, with the all-above approach with renewable energies, that would create tens of thousands of jobs. And instead of rebuilding roads, bridges, and schools in other countries, we should be doing that here in this country. The whole reason why there's not an infrastructure bill on the table of the present occupant of the White House is because those are jobs that the Republicans can't outsource. Okay? You build bridges and schools here, right? Instead of building them overseas. All right? We need to invest, spend.
But not with Chinese steel, with American steel.
Exactly, that as well. So true. One other thing about healthcare, these people that have lost their livelihoods, their jobs, their businesses, their homes, their photographs, their wedding photos, and their baby photos, they're going to lose their health care too. And in my world, in a Medicare for All world, they would not have that worry. They would not have the stress of what they're going through right now. The incident out in Las Vegas, those people that were shot and survived, they're going to have lifelong potential disabilities, okay? They're going to have to pay for that themselves, their insurance, all right? In Newtown, when 20 innocent victims, young children were killed, please understand where I'm going with this. If those individuals were killed by virtue of a vehicle, automobile, there would be insurance involved. Okay? Families all the injuries along the way. There's no insurance for somebody that dies by gunshot. Okay? So, I mean, there are things that we need to look outside the box on a lot of these issues. All right? There's so much at stake. You know, these people are going to be scarred for the rest of their life, physically and emotionally. Okay? We have to be there for them. All right? Yes, sir.
Just to follow up there, have you heard of the concept of universal basic income as a response to automation taking jobs? And if so, would you be in support of it?
I would definitely be in support of that. That would be certainly a heavy lift, given the composition of what we're looking at right now. But, we should be on an education tour, whether it be Medicare for all right? Until something affects somebody personally, it's kind of a, it's their problem, right? Well, until it affects, I might also get emotional right now. I just had something personal over the last 10 days. I had a cousin, 30-year-old young lady, smartest, funniest young lady, okay, who died from a very rare disease in the hospital for months, Cleveland Clinic, all right? She lost her battle last week, okay? Her husband has insurance, certainly didn't get in a conversation with, but just imagine if it was somebody who didn't have insurance and listen, it's tough enough going through this as a family member and watching your loved ones go through the agony of what my cousin went through, okay? But to have that now on his plate and others like him, it's not in my America. We're number one, we're full of crap, okay? The hypocrisy is numbing. Okay, I just find it. I was raised Catholic, went to church as a kid, right? And I can't imagine taking health care away from the most vulnerable while giving tax breaks to the average amongst us in the green. Okay, we've been Gordon Gecko'd for 35 years. We used to live 35 years ago. Family of four could live the American dream on one single income. Now we need two just to get by. That doesn't take into account the soaring costs of higher education or health care. You need two incomes. There's no more hours in the day for people to make any money. All right? We need to increase wages. Livable wages, $15 an hour. I'm in retail, so people ask me, and I don't talk about it enough. I'm in sales. I sell Snickers bars and snacks. It's a great job. Gum, candy, and whatnot. And at a retail level, Shell stations, BPs, mini marts, and the like. And I ask my customers, in order for the company on which I work for to succeed, my customers need to succeed. And in order for my customers to succeed, they need customers. And in order for that to happen, they need wages in their pocket. Okay? There are not a lot of millionaires that are walking through the turnstiles of my customers' businesses.
Right.
But there's a lot of people like you in here that walk in there every day. And don't let anybody kid you. Everybody in this room, we are the job creators, not business owners, okay? Wages create demand, demand creates jobs. We need to put money in the pockets of people who spend it, all right? That's a fact. These tax breaks for the rich. One last thing about taxes, and then I'll go on and ask for your question.
Got ideas for taxes anyway.
They talk about flat taxes, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. The only flat tax I want to see is on payroll taxes. Because right now, if you make over $127,000 a year, you're capped. No SSI, payroll taxes anymore. I would lift that cap, making Social Security solvent in perpetuity, and strengthen benefits, not take them away. I would also provide for a gap. Household wages are about $51,000 a year. I would provide for a gap at around the $35,000 to $45,000 range where nobody would pay any payroll taxes. They would put more money in the pockets of people like that I know. All right? They'll go out and spend it. By the time that hits, there'll probably be Thanksgiving. Maybe you can take your family out for holiday dinner or buy your kid an extra pair of shoes. We need to really think about our tax. That's the type of tax reform I see. I'm a progressive taxation kind of a guy. All right? And that gentleman?
Yeah, there's one question.
Please.
A lot of countries, not ours, All trade agreements, by law in a lot of countries, a person from labor has to be at that table.
Yes, sir.
When we negotiated TPP, there was nothing but corporate.
Correct.
And when trade agreements are made, we need a representative,
Yes, sir.
because corporations are not looking out for us.
Absolutely agree. You know, in Germany, you know, they didn't have they didn't feel the effects on the economy back in 2008 like we did here, because a lot of their workforce, majority of their workforce is unionized. And the employers, as opposed to, you know, setting them to the side, they just cut back their hours and supplemented their income. Okay, that's what we got to do, partly in some form or fashion about a minimum level of income. So, you know, there's no silver bullet to any of this stuff. There's a lot of moving parts, okay? So I'm not going to kid anybody. I think he was, I'm sorry.
I'm not going to burden the whole audience. I have some bizarre ideas on changing the tax structure. You've got to get every damn corporation doing business in America, whether they're an American corporation or a foreign corporation, to pay their fair share of taxes off the top. Before, and this whole system needs change. Drastic change. And if you give me your email addresses, I'll be glad to send you my ideas to both of you.
Yeah.
And I don't want to elaborate on them here.
Well, I'll comment a little bit about a thing called tax inversions, where a corporation here buys another company in another country to establish their corporate charter. Okay, they're leaving their tax and profit dollars overseas. Okay, and now the Republicans want to repatriate that stuff, sir, ladies and gentlemen. It is not going to be. When that money comes back, it's not going to go into our pockets. It's going to go into theirs.
The first thing that needs to be changed is we don't care where your goddamn home office is, we would care where your workers are.
That's absolutely right. I couldn't
Where
agree.
your workers are. And you should pay more taxes if your workers have been sent over to Bangladesh and all these others. You should be not getting a break, you should be paying more. And the only way you do that is a gross receipts tax on every damn dollar before it leaves the country.
I like the cut of your jib, sir.
And I'd like to be in Congress with you, buddy.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, at 76, I'd like to be kicking butt.
Okay. I'm sorry, he was going to ask.
When I was working for I used to work for the U.S. Department of Transportation, and I was involved in Germany overseas, okay? And I worked with Deutsche Aerospace, which is the German aerospace companies. They're owned by Mercedes-Benz. And those companies, Mercedes-Benz, each had a labor person from a labor union on the board.
Yes, sir.
This country don't have that.
Right.
And that's a big drawback.
Yes, it is. Can I ask how much time do I have? Because I do want to make a couple more points.
We're good.
Alison, go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, I was just listening to what everyone had to say, and I always think like the problem with why these large companies dodge taxes and why there's so much automation is because we have these huge multinational corporations that can afford to do stuff like this and can afford to lobby for Congress and Senate and the presidency to get these things accomplished. And there's laws on the book to prevent these companies to be this big, and how aggressive would you be?
You know, I'll tell you.
The Sherman Antitrust Act.
Right, the Republican Party, they stress, you know, competition. They're not for competition. When you see corporations buy other companies, they love that. We're seeing the monopolization of our economy. We are living the game of monopoly right now, okay? When you put power in the hands of few, they control the media, the message, okay? You know, there's no competition out there. It's not a favorable system to us. I want to wait. I'm sorry, you had a question in the back?
Yes, I have a question. Both of you touched on it. You talked about small businesses. What is your plan to get the money into the hands of the people who are actually going to create the small businesses? Because from the crash of 2008, a lot of people lost their homes, which was part of their wealth building point. So if you don't have a house anymore, how are you going to have a business?
We have to make it easier for people to get out small business loans.
Okay, how are you going to do that? Because if you had an issue because you went through, say, financial difficulty back in 2008 to 2012, getting back on your feet, they're gonna look at your credit score. So what are you going to put in place that is going to kind of give you that bridge
if you wanted to
of where
join-
you're not going to look at the whole scheme of the credit score, but actually look at what the person is providing. Because that person can put a business together, like you said, small businesses create jobs, and they want to keep the jobs
Right.
within that community because those people live in the community.
Correct.
So what are your plans to get the money actually to the people who are actually going to create the small businesses to drive the economy?
Marie.
Do you want to go ahead? Okay, so I'll start, it's three parts, right? So the first part is that what I would look at is an amendment to the Dodd-Frank Act. We still have to keep the chains on big banks, but we do have to loosen up community banks to be able to loan again. It's just critical that we do. I see it in every community that I have in my district. And what I mean by that is working with them to understand what are those requirements, what are those needs for each loan. Because it goes both ways, is that homeowners in communities can't get mortgages and home equity loans, and they cannot get small business loans, and that's a problem. So the way we solve that is amending Dodd-Frank slightly so that the community banks can lend again at a more appropriate level and be open to small businesses. Also, if you create a system within each community where there actually is a educational system, like an entrepreneurial program at a community center or a community college, I call them kiosks, that can be dropped in. People can learn how to be a good entrepreneur over like a 6 to 9 month certificate system. They present that certificate to the banks that I've learned how to do this well, and here's my credit score, work with me. And there's also called credit repair programs too, that if you're given an educational program, this is how you can repair your credit so that in 2 years' time you can come back to us with business plan and we'll be very inviting of it, or maybe even in a year. Credit can be repaired faster than we think it can be, for sure. We've learned that in any number of ways. So for me, there's three parts to it. It's letting community banks lend again, amending the Dodd-Frank, creating community college programs and community center programs, using existing real estate, dropping in entrepreneurial and small business programs to give them the education that they need. Half the reason that small businesses fail is because they didn't know either how to do their books or how to do their marketing or how to do their operations or facilities or talent management. And if you had significant programs to do that, they would know that going in. So it is about education and providing credit repair as well as loans to be able to facilitate that.
Yeah, and also, whenever you see we have to keep profit dollars in the local community as well. When you see a Walmart going into the community, hundreds of small businesses go extinct, okay? It's great, the tax base is all well and good, but the profit dollars goes to Arkansas, right? And that's got to stop as well. So that's a community effort. And also, Medicare for all. If we went to a Medicare for all system, I think we would see an increase in entrepreneurship. Okay, because let's face it, people are staying on their jobs for insurance purposes in a lot of instances. So I mean, there's a lot of good unintended consequences to Medicare for all. But before I ask you to ask your question, I want to make one point about a topic that was brought up earlier, and that's the financing of elections. Okay, everybody's familiar with the John Ossoff special election down in Atlanta. Okay, all right. With all the national attention he got, he raised $23 million. All right, he got 128,000 votes. I got 138,000 votes on $20,000.
Money doesn't win elections.
Absolutely correct. I raised 0.1% of what he did, and I got 10,000 more votes. So don't tell me a grassroots campaign cannot be run. I will be outspent. I concede it. I will not be out-hustled. Okay? It gets to the point in time in the campaign, where you have to make, I don't like asking for things for myself. I like your vote, for sure, but in order for me to get my message out, everybody needs help with printed material, okay? Now, being a marketing guy myself, I have to say this about mailers, okay? I understand its benefit I'm not gonna be raising that kind of money to be pumping out mailers, okay? I find I get the best response knocking on doors. There's no substitute, none, for knocking on doors, okay? I'm out there pounding the pavement every day, all right? And what heartens me most, the best and longest conversations I would have had with people so far, whether it be at parades and festivals and things like that, turn out people to be Republican, okay? We are more alike than we are not alike. We have the same issues, bills to pay, taking care of our parents that are getting up there in age. Again, but you know, I can certainly use any help along the way. You know, I will take any fraction of a $27 Bernie Sanders donation. If I got $2.70 for all Bernie crats in Illinois, I'd be able to raise $600,000. Okay? So spread the word to your Bernie crat friends, okay? I'll take $2.70 from each and every one of you.
Push your Facebook page.
Go to my campaign Facebook page, but you know, we need help. You know, I used to volunteer for Dennis Anderson, who ran for the 14th Congressional District before. Great guy, okay? Learned a lot from him. And I'm so humbled by the level of volunteerism that has come to me. You know, 2 years ago, I was nowhere near the position I'm in now with the campaign video and the number of volunteers that I have. You know, I have to thank the Will County Progressives, okay? Larry and Nikki and Suzanne and others, okay? Kane County Progressives, all my progressive friends, okay? I thank God for Bernie Sanders for coming into my life, all right? Again, I will not be out hustled. I promise you that. I will work my ass off for you. Not my ass off, my ass. So, yes.
Are you endorsed by Our Revolution Illinois, or is that the Illinois Bernie Crats?
I did receive the endorsement from the Our Revolution Illinois Bernie Crat organization. I also recently received the endorsement from State Senator Terry Link out of Lake County.
Yeah.
So, but you know, endorsements are fantastic, right? But regardless, whether I get endorsed, it's not going to change my approach. Get out there and hustle. The only thing I want to lose between now and March 20th is 20 pounds.
You use it.
My wife, listen, this is a new wardrobe I just can't. My wife has been digging me lately with this stuff. But I'll try to look better for her. Thank you very much for the, thanks a lot. Go ahead.
I have a question for both of you. This is about a case that's going to be heard by the Supreme Court next term called Janice v. Ask Me. For people who may not be familiar with it, there is a Illinois state employee who has been basically paid for by Rauner, who is challenging the concept of fair share dues. Basically, fair share is for people who don't support unions being allowed to do political activity. So fair share dues cover just the administrative costs, the cost of lawyers to back contracts, negotiating. If you guys want to sit down, please feel free. So this case is basically challenging whether or not he should have to pay union dues, and I just want to get your take on the case without steering you in either direction.
Sure. So I am not familiar with the case, although I am familiar with obviously the concepts that you put forward. Reminding the individual that is bringing the litigation to the fore, he is in a union. He or she is in a union.
He is a state employee like myself, a member of AFSCME.
Okay.
And basically he is trying to avoid having to pay fair share dues moving forward, and Rauner is bankrolling this case. There was a case last year out of California, right when Scalia passed is when it went away, so now this is the new version of a fight against unions.
Right. So I'll talk broadly and then more finitely. So obviously I'm very against right-to-work states. We have 33 of them. That's 33 too many in my view. I think it's sickening, and honestly, Rauner has done everything in his power to make this another right-to-work state. It's why he wanted to be governor. I mean, he doesn't care about anything else. He doesn't even care about power. He just wants to do away with unions. Let's just be really clear about what his goal is. So he bankrolls anything like that. He bankrolled the Orland mayor's upheaval, and many others like it. He props up propped all day long. So everything that he does is anti-union and should try to do away with union. So I'm not surprised that he's bankrolling it. The fair share dues issue is extremely challenging to overcome because I think that we are becoming redder in this state. So it'll be interesting to see how judges react to this. For me, the premise of a union is so that everything is made fair, right? Is that if you put your dues into a union, you should be able to get the benefits. The notion of the right to work laws is to force out unions, obviously, but also force them to operate in a different way so that they're made to look bad, that those dues are made to look evil, right? And so for me, if you're paying your dues, and if I understand this correctly, this individual doesn't want to pay the fair share portion or doesn't want to pay their union dues, which is
He doesn't want to pay fair share. The argument is that it is unconstitutional to force him, in quotes there, to force him to pay dues to a union that does political activity that he doesn't support, so he doesn't feel, and I think I'm correct, that he doesn't feel he should even have to pay the fair share part. So that's the challenge, is that is it against First Amendment rights to have people benefit from unions without having to pay into them, basically?
That's a really tough question for me because obviously I think you should support the union. I think that the charter of the union should be the ruling body in this. So in other words, if you're paying into a union and you're expecting certain support and collective bargaining and all of those benefits, then you should pay what all of your brothers and sisters are paying. For me, that's what he should be doing. Is that should be fair for everybody in the union and follow the rules of the union. So I don't understand this individual's premise, I guess, is that if he's trying to not pay part of the dues when he's bought into a union and wants to get what everybody else gets. So for me, I'm troubled by him, that individual. So
this is nothing new. When Reagan was president, they did the same thing. Okay, and what the premise was then, if I can offer you every benefit a dues-paying member gets, then why should any of us pay union dues? That's the way to bust the union. Right. Because when they go into arbitration or whatever they do, they have to pay attorneys.
Right.
That's money. And if no one's putting money into the union is going to go bust.
Right.
So they're just rehashing what they tried to do some years ago.
So he's trying to parse it, really. He's trying to say, me as an individual, I'm going to pay this amount, but all my brothers and sisters are going to pay more, effectively.
Well, he's saying he doesn't want to pay at all.
He doesn't want to pay at all. Yeah. So that's a way to bust the union. So if you're going to pay, if you're not going to pay and get the benefits of the union, then why should I pay and get the benefits of the union?
Right.
So everybody's going to start looking at that. Well, why should we pay? You guys have to represent us anyway.
Right. Right. But it's not, so in Illinois, I don't even understand why this is a case, because in Illinois, we are not yet a right to work state.
I think they're using it as a test case myself.
Yeah.
They are.
This is going to lay the foundation, with the nominations that the occupant of the White House right now is making throughout the country at different levels of our judiciary. Unions are really going to have their feet put to the fire here. Listen, for anybody here that's not part of a union, we should all be thankful. I'm not in a union, but I grew up in a union household. My wife's a teacher. Okay, we should all be thankful for the existence of unions. They literally and figuratively built the middle class. And through our trade policies, when they exported those union-paying jobs, they also attacked our middle class, and the wages went through the floor. Okay. Union participation was up over 30% in the early 80s. Now it's just around 11 or 12, depending on what statistic you look at.
About 40 around the
We need. I will be an advocate for a card check in the workplace. Democracy in the workplace. Unions. Imagine that. It's we should all be advocates for that bill.
I believe there's a Supreme Court case going on now, the exact same issue. And it'll be before the court this term.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's what I'm referring to. This is a U.S. Supreme Court, not a state
right, and
case.
That case comes out of California, I believe. And they're going to rule on it, and it's absent also. Or it's a public employee union.
So yours is an Illinois resident? that
He's
you're
an
talking-
Illinois resident, but this is a case before the U.S. Supreme
Yes, it
Court.
is.
Okay, oh, so
Okay,
we
last-
might have 2 Supreme Court cases.
Well, the last
Could be.
comment I want to make is, I think the Democratic Party has failed, since basically Obama got elected to grow the numbers of state legislatures and the Congress, basically because they've abandoned the working class and they've abandoned unions. Nancy Pelosi had a majority, and she could have got card check done. They had a super majority.
So
They failed to do it, and then President Clinton, NAFTA, WTO,
Glass-Steagall.
yeah. I mean, most of the things the Democratic presidents have done when they've been in power have been, harmful to working class families and extremely harmful to unions. Why unions support Democratic candidates, I have no clue.
Well,
I guess
I don't
because
know-
they
I don't
have
know why they
nowhere
would
else,
support
I guess 'cause they
Republican
have nowhere else
candidates.
to go. But I mean,
That's all.
the neoliberal policies of the establishment Democratic Party have hurt working class people, and that's why we have President Trump today.
Well, and I think, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say ladies first, but this one I...
No, go ahead.
What the Republic, you have to doff your chapeau to these people. They've hijacked the English language to a T over the last 30-plus years. Up is down, right is left, in is out, right? The last 7 years, they did nothing but attack the Affordable Care Act. They won local, state, and federal positions under the premise of repeal, not even repeal, it was only repeal and replace over the last year. Repeal Obamacare. They had nothing to offer. The only time I appeared with my Republican incumbent last election cycle was at a forum down in Yorkville, the Kendall County Farm Bureau, okay? And I said it then, in the short time that we spoke. They passed legislation, out of the House, they passed it 62 times to repeal the Affordable Care Act. The one time it passed the Senate as well. They sent that bill to President Obama's desk only to veto it. They had no coupling legislation to replace Obamacare. We've been conned for 35 years, and especially over the last 7, to the point where they use that rhetoric to win, again, local, state, and federal positions. And now they've been exposed, okay, for the politicians that they are. They are not representatives.
Doesn't it all go back to the lack of the fairness doctrine? Because there's not equal, all the major radio stations are corporate owned by
And then
by
the
Republicans.
Telecommunications Act in 1996, Bill Clinton, with NAFTA and that act, not good.
These
So
are
how about
neoliberals, they're not Democrats.
Right. Can Marie answer the question
Yeah,
now?
and it's sort of an answer and an idea, so stay with me for a minute. So you're absolutely right that we haven't grown unions and they've been decimated by not just Republican activity, but some Democrats. I would agree with Jim that more Republican activity has been problematic for unions than Democratic activity. But what everybody's forgotten is that we have this whole group of young people called millennials that like being in groups and like to be fair and like justice. This whole group called the millennials, and we should be courting. I just had this conversation with SEIU and several other unions that we should be courting those groups and giving them opportunities, right? And saying, hey, unions are a really good thing. And then further, what I would say about union development is that I think that they have to adapt. It's not just with a demographic group, it's that they have to adapt and hold their union members to see what they want. Half the problem is that union members are wanting specific things and not getting what they want from their management. So I would like them to communicate better with their own bodies. And then that said, back to the representation issue, on every corporate board there should be a union member, and and I even encourage this, and I've owned small businesses, is having union folks inside your own business. So it is about representation, but it is about expanding the base. It really is. So I would say, I would agree with everybody in the room that Democrats haven't been the best to the unions either.
Yeah, I just want to relate, add on to it. During 2008, the unions big time went for Obama. They met with him quite a few times, and they made it public. All they wanted was card check. When he became president, for 200 days, they had controlled the Senate, they controlled the Congress, and they held the presidency. Did they ever bring that bill up for vote for those 200 days?
No.
0 times. They're not doing a good enough job for you.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Well, let me mention this. You know, in the first 2 years of the President Obama's administration, over 242 bills passed out of the House of Representatives. A lot of them had to do with jobs-related bills. All those bills were only to be filibustered by the Senate Republicans. Okay? No, I understand it. If you heard earlier, I'm an advocate for card check, most definitely. Okay. So they did try to do something, but certainly there was monumental historic pushback from the Senate. So.
Any other questions?
I got a question for everybody.
Yeah.
Who here shops at a Union grocery store?
Joel, right?
Yeah, UFCW.
What products you buy that are Union? Everybody here is talking about unions and the decline in the middle class. Where do you spend your money? That's the only way to make a change in this country, is if we make it. Politicians, God bless them, are not responsible for you and I. It's up to us to make the change.
I agree, 100%.
I will not set foot in Walmart.
No.
I'm sorry. That's it. I don't give a damn what they're selling. I will not go in that store.
Quit buying shit on Amazon, please.
Good Friday.
I say that
Amazon?
98% of the time.
They're very abusive to their workers. Actually, I know a dozen workers that have been abused there at Amazon.
Now, that's a prime case for enforcement of the Sherman Antitrust Act. They
So is Walmart.
vertically integrated, and they pay no sales tax. They try to extort tax dollars anywhere they go. They're doing it with the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. Let some other state have it, good riddance to them.
Yeah. Keep small businesses
Here.
here.
It's 55% of the economy. 55% of the economy are small businesses and 54% of the labor force. So, and it's the only segment that has been growing over the last 15 years. So the fact that it gets beat up every day is unconscionable.
I have a question for both of you. I ask everybody, nobody answers me. So there was a report came out of UNESCO, which is in the news again for other reasons, in 2013. Had about 60 researchers all over the world doing this, and they basically came out and said the way we're going to feed the world, especially with climate change and all that, is local food, not agribusiness, GMOs, all this horse hockey, local food. And also local food and agricultural practices are, on some estimates, account for about 50% of the carbon and gases in the air, and actually changes in agricultural practices can sequester carbon and literally can reverse some of that. And so what I want to know is where the two of you stand on supporting the development of local food and local economies as opposed to agribusiness.
Not to serve Monsanto.
Monsanto, yes. I'm wholeheartedly in support of, local farmers. There's so much that we should be doing more, and I'm totally against, corporate farms, GMOs, and the like. We need to do all that we can to help, local businesses, especially in that area, and co-ops of any kind. And maybe I'm not answering the question probably is anywhere near what you're looking for, but
Well, better than a lot.
There are specific things we can do to support farmers, because at the end of the day, farmers are entrepreneurs. And so while all of these great farming families have had these farms for generation after generation, what they're not doing is they're not broadening their footprint and transferring that knowledge. So if we could provide federal grants that would transfer that knowledge to other people so that we could have more farm-to-table action, not just with restaurants, but with individual buyers. It goes back to your premise. I think it works beautifully and dovetails into your idea that let's put money in the pockets of humans and that will grow the economy. I think that that's right. So offering leadership and thought leadership around farmers having the ability to train and mentee other farmers, I think is super important. And also, I believe in urban farming. So I've been part of a project in Chicago that does rooftop, but also even just balcony farming. That's become a thing, actually. So these things, if all of these efforts move forward, everybody's a little farm entrepreneur.
You know, one of the things that personally, my in-laws, they own farmland, and they've been approached about leasing their land for solar purposes. So, I mean, there are other ways to generate, you know, be good to the environment and also utilize the resources.
In Michigan, Jennifer Granholm, when she was governor, did a beautiful job of creating 10,000 jobs through wind farms that were used on regular farms. So they had the windmills on farmers' land, and it worked beautifully, and it actually didn't disrupt their crops at all.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
I think the law, people don't realize, the government pays small farmers not to grow.
Yes. Happens all the time.
Yes.
Yep.
And that needs to stop.
Yep.
They pay them not to grow.
Yep.
They also supplement corn, soy, all these big crops as opposed.
I'm also an advocate for legalization of cannabis and industrial hemp. We should bring those textiles, you know, we used to make so much here. And for all those constitutionalists out there, the Constitution was written on hemp paper, okay? So tell our Republican friends that if they're true constitutionalists, they would love. I mean, that's the one thing I respect about Senator Paul. He is for the legalization of industrial hemp. I agree with him. A broken clock is right twice a day.
You know, I was on the USS Hornet, and when she pulled in Long Beach Harbor, hemp rope went over that side and anchored that ship to the dock.
That's right.
You can't get hemp rope in this country anymore.
And one other thing about the legalization of cannabis, if I can expound on that. You know, one of the questions I get a lot from veterans, I went down to the Pride Parade this past summer, and I was talking to a couple of vendors, street vendors, and they were both veterans. And they were telling me how, you know, they were reliant on the medication through the VA, and they were getting, you know, they themselves, not themselves, but others, they knew they were getting addicted, you know, opioid addiction. And they told me if it wasn't for the fact that the state of Illinois, you know, legalized, you know, medicinal marijuana, they don't know where they'd be. They're a lot healthier now than before then. So there's multiple reasons. I mean, look only you know, from a revenue standpoint, look only to Colorado. It would cure a lot of ills. And the war on drugs is a total abject failure, okay? It's great for the private prison systems.
That's right. That's what it was designed for.
And if you think about it, it's a form of voter suppression because when somebody becomes a felon, they can't vote in a lot of states.
Right.
Okay? So
that's a new Southern strategy.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's so many benefits for those things that I'll be a strong advocate for both of those things. Christine?
Do you believe that prisoners should be able to vote? They vote in other countries. Eventually, at some point, a lot of them...
Prisoners.
They're going to get out. Most of them, at some point, are going to get out. Shouldn't they have a decision in their future? Other countries, prisoners vote. Actually, they have debates in prisons in other countries.
I would say it would depend on the infraction why they're in there, I suppose. There are certain crimes that I think you forfeit, you know, some things. Shop, you know. In some instances, I would agree with that. Thank you for the question.
In terms of legalizing marijuana, how about rescinding sentences of low drug offenders who are in right now.
I say let them go.
It's ridiculous. And that's and honestly, that's such an easy thing to do. They make it sound like it's horribly, it would be so impractical. Well, it's not. It would actually save a lot of money and save a lot of lives too.
Absolutely. You know, the one thing I give Ronald Reagan, you know, back in the S&L crisis, back in the 80s, he did send a lot of bankers to jail, okay? I think for what Wall Street and others of their ilk did to our economy back in 2008, I say take the low-level drug offenders out of jail and put those white-collar criminals back in there.
Yeah.
Personally speaking.
What do you guys think about the student debt crisis?
Well,
It's $1.5 trillion almost now.
Okay,
Student debt crisis.
you know, just as, you know, we allow homeowners to refinance their home mortgages, we should allow anybody that has a student loan to refinance their student loan debt, okay? I mean, for the next 20 years, I'll be paying off Purdue and Iowa State, okay? And if I was able to refinance, or my kids were, you know, again, that would put money in the pockets of people who will
How
spend
about
it.
getting revocation of the provision that it's not dischargeable in bankruptcy?
Yeah, unfortunately, Mr. Biden had a little bit to do with that, putting that provision in.
Well, so what?
Well, I'm just saying, no, I agree, it rescinded, absolutely.
Well, and what I would say to that too is that let's go downstream on that, and let's put two things. I believe State College should be free, and that would solve some problems because then you're not saddled with debt. And then the other piece to that too is making everything more affordable, and also, well, I certainly believe these private institutions we've had forever, private colleges are more than happy to exist. We have to put either some regulatory, some caps on their ability to raise admission rates all the time. This is ridiculous. Since you and I were in college, it has risen at a ridiculous rate where literally no one can afford to go to college anymore. So, that's my 2 cents. Sir.
I assume both of you, I'm assuming both of you guys are 100% behind Bernie. From kindergarten to college, the end of college, it's paid for.
I agree with that.
In public schools.
Yeah,
Public schools,
yeah.
absolutely.
I think it's fine for private schools still exist, but I do think you should have a public education system.
I mean, you have European countries that do that, and it's in there. I don't know.
And does it well.
They have socialized medicine, they get free, you know. And with any Medicare for All system, I'm also an advocate to include dental and vision into that equation as well. Especially dental for Medicare recipients. I mean,
What'd you say?
yeah, so,
It covers everything.
that's so important, you know. If you can't eat if you can't chew, you know.
That's a problem.
So, yes.
So from your election experience, how far do we need to move the needle to get you into that office? From what you lost, what do we need to do to help you?
I need a lot of help.
No, I mean, what do we need to do to move the needle for you to get in there? I think of it in terms of, is it 5% more Democrats turn out? Is it 10% more? What do we need to do to flip that seat?
Personally, my focus right now, between now and March 20th, primarily are Democratic voters, because let's face it. I mean, I'll have a lot of Republican friends pull a Democratic ticket. Love you, okay? My concentration is our Democratic voters right now. At parades, festivals, fairs, I'll talk to everybody, all right? But once I'm fortunate enough to get past primary March 20th, I'm going right to the moderate Republicans and independents, okay? That's where we're going to be able to flip the 14th, okay? The 3rd, the 16th, okay? The 6th. We don't talk to our neighbors as much as we used to anymore. You know, when I used to bang on just under about 10,000 doors last campaign cycle, all throughout the district, people would say, Jim, thank you so much for being here. I thought there was a Democrat in town. I'm thinking, you're not the only Democrat in the block, all right? Because we don't talk to our neighbors anymore. You know, certainly things have changed because of dual income families. You know, mothers come home, fathers come home, they got to take care of their kids, feed them, bathe them, and whatnot. And they're reliant on whatever they watch on television, so they don't really have a lot of human contact. And, you know, how are you doing today? How's your family? How are your kids? And I'm telling you, there is no doubt in my mind no doubt in my mind, if we're able to put the labels aside and we talk about the issues, there is a lot of gray area of agreement, and we just have to appeal to the sensibilities of others.
Right, but in numbers terms, I'm just thinking, I'm not worried about you getting to the primary.
How many people are in your primary? What is the total amount of voters in your primary?
In the district, well, in every congressional district, there's a range between 710,000 in my district, but generally speaking, there's 750,000 voters plus or minus 5%.
But how many primary voters are there in your primary, typically in an electoral cycle?
Okay, well, the last primary cycle, there were 74,000 voters. Okay, I won a three-way race. After getting the endorsements, well, I won't even mention endorsements, but I won a three-way race with 43% of the vote. The two other individuals, Jesse got 18%, I believe, and the one gentleman who ran twice before and lost the primaries, I beat him as well. He got 22%. No, that doesn't add up. But I got 43, I think he got 36, something like that. Whatever the numbers add up to 100%.
So if it's 70,000 voters roughly in the primary, 75,000?
Yes, I'm sorry for not understanding.
So he needs roughly 38,000 votes. So
and I will knock on about 7,000 doors. I figure by then. I love canvassing. I love campaigning. My wife, she says, Jim, you come home with a smile on your face every day after you're done campaigning. So, and I like happy wife, happy life. So, I love campaigning.
What about you?
So I've usually in most electoral cycles in my district, in the 3rd district, it's right around 72,000. But this year, because it's a goop year, it'll probably be 75 or 80,000. So I need somewhere between 36 and 41,000 votes. And so I have 20,000 supporters now. I've done a combination of meet and greets and knocking on doors. So that work will continue on forever. I'm working with all of the indivisible groups in Action for a Better Tomorrow and all of that. So we've got some good mobilization, but you can never have enough, to Jim's point.
You're the only one running?
It's just myself and Mr. Lipinski in the primary. So I know everyone thinks Lipinski actually is a Republican, but I'm actually primarying him. So, I mean, I jokingly say that to reporters, that when they say, why are you primarying a Democrat? I'm like, I always say, I'm not.
Any more questions?
So we don't live in either of your districts, so we don't necessarily want to go too far to maybe walk, but maybe some of us do. Is there a way to set up so we can full bank from home, so that if we're home, we can full bank for
Yeah, you can totally do that. In fact, what I'll do is I'll leave my cards, a stack of cards here, and you go on the website and you can just sign up, and then Sophia from my office will contact you.
Okay.
How many here from the 14th Congressional? I'd love to get your signatures before you leave.
Is anybody here from the 3rd? It's okay for a second.
Jim, I'll walk for you tomorrow. I'm doing walking all day tomorrow, so I'll walk for you tomorrow. I'll take some petitions with me tonight. I don't care.
Another thing is a
The problem
candidate.
is the petition get wet.
No, I got a whole system.
One thing I learned as a candidate, the best time to canvass is in bad weather. All right? Especially when it's snowing. Oh, absolutely. They think you're crazy, you earned my vote. So when it's snowing,
They feel sorry for you.
All right, going once. Twice.
Real quick. It's kind of not really a question. I know you listen to Norman.
oh, I love it.
He was talking about the rider that they've added on for cannabis states. Did you hear that one?
I did not.
Okay. They were talking about for the last 3 years, there's been a rider added onto a bill, just a paragraph, stating that the Department of Justice cannot spend any money to prosecute or to do anything in states where cannabis has been legalized or medically legalized, as long as people are complying with the state laws. So far this year, that has not happened. If it doesn't happen, the Department of Justice can go into the states and start arresting people.
With Jeff Sessions.
Right now, like you presently need to just call whoever you have. I mean, we want you guys, but for now, you need to call whoever you have and tell them that they need to.
Please understand, the consequence of the present occupant of the White House, whether it be Gorsuch on the Supreme Court and all these department heads. I mean, Republicans run for government to destroy government.
Yeah.
All right? And dismantle from within. And Jeff Sessions is no friend of a lot of people.
I think that's an agenda item for him, likely after this, after all of the other atrocities that will be next month.
But the one, let me mention this, my last comment. The only silver lining to this presidency is the level of activism that has been spurred on since the inauguration, okay? I ask you this. There's so many issues that affect so many different people, you yourselves personally. Don't get burnt out. Pick one or two issues and just focus on that, whether it be a candidate or issues. Just get out there, get active for those things that you're strong advocates for. Take a breather every now and again on the weekends, spend time with your family, okay? Recharge the batteries and get back out there. So just pace yourself. For us, it's a long campaign cycle. March 20th is going to be here before we know it. And I'll mention this as well. We have 5 candidates running for the 14th Congressional District, okay? I am not running against my opponents. I'm running for the people of the 14th, okay? I want to be the messenger for the people of the 14th District, but I also pledge this, that if I have the misfortune of not getting past the 20th of March, I will throw all my support behind that person that did. Because as I mentioned before, the number one objective is to get Randy Hultgren out of Washington, D.C. But I'm going to bookend it by saying, I want to be your messenger. So please understand, we're all in this together.
Last opportunity for
Both
questions.
of your seats and then several others, or we hope they're going to be your seats. They're in that red congressional district. So when our Revolution National went through, my son actually did the math for the congressional districts. It was like you guys and maybe 4 others, those are like the hottest seats that they want flipped, and they want you guys to do so.
Actually, my district is blue. It went 8 to Hillary, and then and Bernie, or Hillary won it by 16, and the general Bernie won it by 8. My district. So we're actually solidly blue, and it's the biggest misnomer. Everyone thinks that my district is red, but actually it's more blue.
By red, I actually meant like the hottest.
Oh,
constant. That would be like the first tier races that
Yeah.
you want those seats.
Out.
Yeah. But yeah, you guys were in the first wave, so.
Thank you for your questions. And thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, thank everyone. If you have